All right, so on the front of your worksheet, I had written that 4 terms meant we're going to be factoring a polynomial. So you'll see 4 different terms, okay? And you can't put anything together because they've got different variables or they've got different exponents. And so the 4 terms are 4 separate terms. And you always want to look for GCF first, but after GCF, if you've got 4 terms, you actually could factor it down to more. So I called it the inside-out box. So the box is what we use to multiply things in. So now we're going to use it to divide things out or factor things out. So as a review, okay, let's just review multiplication real quick. Multiplication. Okay, so reviewing multiplication with the box. So let's say I had 2x plus 4 times 3y plus 5, okay? And I intentionally have an x and a y so that they separate, so that we actually have 4 terms, and you're going to see that in a second. So remember, when we multiplied, we made a box, and we put one of them down the side, 2x plus 4, and we put one of them across the top. Okay? So we went outside in, and then we just multiplied them together. 2x times 3y is 6xy. 2x times 5 is 10x, positive 10x. 3y times 4 is a positive 12y. And 5 times 4 is a positive 20. Okay? Now, this problem would be different because you can't put 10x and 12y together. They're 2 different terms. So even though when we multiplied in the other lesson, a lot of times the diagonals came together, that's because the variables matched. But in this case, I deliberately made 2 different variables so that they stay separate. So our answer is actually 4 terms. 6xy plus 10x plus 12y plus 20. Okay, this is our final answer because you can't combine. And if you notice, it's 1, 2, 3, 4 terms. So it's 4 terms, just like we're about to talk about 4 terms. So instead of starting here and multiplying, now we're going to start with our terms and we're going to factor. We're going to end up back in these binomials, just like we did with the other type of factoring, okay? So we're going to work backwards. Since multiplication is the opposite of division or factoring, we start with the answer and then we work it backwards into the two groups, and we're going to use our box the reverse way, okay? So now, now let's start with 4 terms. Let's start with k to the 3rd minus 2k squared minus 16k plus 32. All right? And when you look at this, there's 4 terms, so that gives you a hint. Let me turn to the 4 corners of my box. So we're going to go from the inside out. That's the hardest part for my students to remember, is that we start inside out when it comes to factoring. We work it backwards. So we're going to put k to the 3rd in one box, minus 2k squared in another box, minus 16k in the 3rd box, and a positive 32 in the last box. So the first and last have to be at the beginning and the end. I just went from left to right, okay? So again, we're starting with the inside, and now we're going to divide out. And so what we're going to be looking for is GCF. Let me put it right here. Pull out the GCF of each pair. Okay? GCF is what can each pair divide by. And by pair, I mean this. First pair I'm going to look at is these two. This is a pair. So the first row, what can k to the third and minus 2k squared both divide out? Well, they both have k's, and they have 2 of them. So you can divide a k squared out of this and a k squared out of that. So that's the GCF of that pair, okay? Then here, what's the GCF of this pair? Okay, it could be 8, it could be 4, but it's actually bigger than that. It's actually 16. So you make it 16 because 16 divides by 16 and 32 divides by 16. That's the GCF of it, okay? So that's the first, those are 2 pairs that we look at. Then we have to go in the other direction. The other pairs that we have to look at are now going across the top. Now we have to look at our columns. Okay, so now I pair this, and I say k cubed minus 16k. What can I divide out of both of those? Only a k. And then I look at this pair. Okay, what divides out of 2k squared and a positive 32? Well, they're both even. It's not going to be a k because that doesn't have one. 2 and 32, the only thing that they both divide by is a 2. Okay? So that's the GCF of these 2 pairs and of these 2 pairs. Then the last thing you have to do is match up your signs. And you have to ask yourself, well, I need a negative 2k squared here, and I need a negative 16k there. So if you were to multiply back in, they actually should connect and should make the answer. So k times k squared is k to the third, so that's good. 2 times k squared is a positive 2k squared. Since I want it negative, I need to make that a minus or a negative 2. So now that checks. K times 16 is 16k. I need it to be a negative 16k, so I'm going to make my number 16 negative. Now it checks, negative 16 times k. And making those negative didn't hurt the 32 because negative 2 times negative 16 is positive 32. So what we did was we multiplied back in to check, and then it all works out. I had students last year say, oh, it's like a big puzzle. Whatever you pulled out has to come back together and actually work. Okay, so these are our answer. K squared minus 16 and k minus 2. Now, we actually could break that down. We talked about that in the patterns. Today, I'm not going to ask you to connect all of the dots, but in the future, you are going to have to recognize, oh, k squared is k times k, and 16 is 4 times 4. So we break it down one more level, and that's what we get. Now, I'm not going to come up with problems like that for you yet, but that is something you've already seen. So this is actually kind of what we're talking about, going from the inside out, okay? And then we're going to practice some more to make sure you can keep track of the GCF, the inside out box, the basic trinomials, the patterns, and then we're going to build more on top of that.